It's been more than a minute since we've had the chance to report on the now 167-day-long conflict in Ukraine, and it matters. Why? Because there has been no end to the destruction. For example, Ukraine's military says 9 Russian planes were just destroyed at an airbase in Crimea, which of course has been under Russian control since 2014. Russia has denied the damage or that the attack even happened at all. With us tonight to discuss, one of the best experts, retired 4-star U.S. Army General Barry McCaffrey, a decorated combat veteran of Vietnam and a former battlefield commander in the Persian Gulf. General, every time I read that introduction, I'm reminded how lucky we are to have you here. Help us understand this escalation. How big of a deal is it? Because there's reporting it was carried out by Ukraine's special forces.
Yeah, well, we don't know exactly what the weapon delivery system was. It seems unlikely it was a Ukrainian aircraft or a cruise missile. You can spot those in the air. It's well beyond the range of U.S.-supplied HIMARS rockets. It was multiple explosions, even given secondary effects. It looked to me like a series of sabotage-initiated events. And with aviation bombs, rockets, fuel in the area, probably improperly stored to boot, it was a devastating strike, and it was in Crimea. And that's not too far from the heartbeat of the Russian Navy in Sevastopol. So I think it was a significant event. The Ukrainians are being pretty quiet about it. They're leaking information, but they're not doing a victory dance because they understand the political sensitivity of all this.
I want to turn to the fighting around Ukraine's nuclear facilities. What's the latest and how dangerous is that situation?
Well, it's a level of irresponsibility on the part of the Russians that, to be honest, surprises me. I mean, they understand the power of nuclear radiation and the lingering effects of wind blowing fissile material back into Russia would be devastating to them also. So it's completely irresponsible. The level of ignorance of Russian tactical units earlier in the war up north of Kiev on another power plant was simply abysmal. They were digging in heavily contaminated Chernobyl radiation areas. So I don't understand what they're thinking. I think they have bad control of their tactical units. This makes no sense. It would be a strategic disaster. The Europeans would be even more outraged if they put at risk the fairly confined land area in the south of Ukraine.
How would you assess where we are in the war right now? Right? In the early months, we were following it day in, day out, hour by hour. Where do things stand now?
Well, I think, first of all, no one is quite sure. We don't understand the level of Ukrainian casualties and the internal struggles they're going through. Their operational security has been good. That's the right thing for them to do. They're not trying to give vulnerabilities to the Russian forces. Having said that, the U.S. finally came out and said the Russians have suffered 80,000 killed and wounded and have lost a massive amount of their equipment. By some counts, more than a third of the modernized weapons they went into Ukraine with. They're in trouble. They're running out of their smart munitions. A lot of their military technology depends on foreign imports of chips and other sophisticated equipment. They legally, in theory, can't send conscripts into the fight in the Ukraine, special military operation. He has to declare general mobilization, which Putin is fearful to do, rightfully so. And then finally, there's some great work coming out of Yale University talking about the Russian economy is crumbling. In fact, they're not able to pay for the war simply through the sales of energy supplies to Western Europe. And they can't find new customers in China or elsewhere overnight. So Putin's in a disaster as the war grinds on. The question is, will NATO stay with the Ukrainians? I think they will. We're right on the verge of having both Sweden and Finland become the 31st and 32nd nations who are part of NATO.
But even if Russia is currently losing the war and their economy is suffering, Vladimir Putin isn't losing his will. So how scary is that? Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Well, I think you make a good point. You know, he's in a corner. It's hard to see any way out. And by the way, the notion Zelensky put on the table categorically that Russia would seize Crimea in 2014 and seize it as a Russian enclave, as part of Russian Mother Russia. Zelensky saying everything's on the table. We're going to regain sovereignty over all of our material, our land area. Putin will never, ever consider leaving the Crimea, among other things, never mind eastern parts of Ukraine, the Donbass and other areas. So I think he's desperate. There's no limit to the potential escalation he could try. I don't think he's going to use nuclear weapons. That would open Pandora's box on him, and I think his generals know that. But he's definitely not going to give up. The question is, will the Russian military start to crumble? And we would hope to see that in the coming months, perhaps by the end of the year.
Or will Russia give up on Putin? General, thank you for joining us tonight, General Barry McCaffrey.